Get in, chop.
Yo, what's up, you guys? It's your girl, Tree, the LPC, and thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the Self-Aware and FDF podcast. This week is going to be a very, very special episode because it is the final episode of season 2, and I have a very special guest here to close us out today, and you guys are just definitely going to be inspired and encouraged by the information that she's going to share. Her name is Kira Wackett. She is a licensed professional counselor, the founder of Adversity Rising, as well as the podcast host for Untethering Shame. So we're going to dive deep into some conversations around shame, eating disorders, and body image, and just really talk through some things that maybe you've had questions about recently, but didn't really know where to go for answers. So without further ado, please welcome to the Self-Aware and FDF podcast, Miss Kira Wackett. Hey, Kira, how are you doing today?
I am doing well. I'm so excited to be here.
I am so excited to have you. I'm glad we could finally make some time to be able to chat with each other because I feel, that what you share and what you do as a therapist is so very important. And the topics that you tackle and things that you work with, they're very much needed right now, especially in our world. So thank you for what you do. I really appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule. So I guess we can go ahead and get started by having you tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a licensed professional counselor. As you said, I'm out in Portland, Oregon. I think I specialize in shame, but within that, I've like seeking. That's a 7 a.m. word right there. I have sought a lot of extra training and kind of reached a different level in eating disorder certification. I've been doing that since I started my practice. I am 11 years in recovery for my own eating disorder. I had a lot of early childhood trauma, some pretty intense PTSD, a lot of anxiety. And so I think for many people that get into these professions, we've gone through our own things, experienced our own things with our family, our loved ones. And so getting into this world was really when I needed support. The treatment that I was given or the treatment that was available, I kept feeling unseen. I kept feeling like I was told so many things that were so off base, not asked the questions that I needed, or they would sort of fixate on in my opinion, the wrong things. So it was like, I want to do this differently. I want to change the conversation. And so had a lot of really beautiful guidance and support when I was doing my master's training to make sure that what I was doing was really centered on the clients and not somehow connected back to my own experiences, my own healing. And so I continue to do a lot of support around that. But now today, really kind of focusing on working with people with shame, which we'll talk about, which is anyone, honestly, but really a lot of the people that I work with are people that are what I would say are human givers, the people that have lost themselves in giving and doing for everybody else. And a lot of the times disordered eating or our relationship with our body and food really comes hand in hand with that because it's a lack of taking care of ourselves and a normalization in that. But also, I think just the idea that what we do and how we look or how we present or are perceived becomes synonymous with who we are. And so for a lot of my work, that's really what I do. And just trying to think about how to re-anchor the person that I'm supporting, empowering, working with to see themselves as the author of their own story, rather than getting stuck out there, sort of chasing external validation and support.
Yeah. Wow. Definitely a lot of good information just in your intro there as it relates to just how you do what you do and the why. I love that every therapist does have a story about why they do what they do. And a lot of times we are drawn to the population that is closest to maybe something that we've experienced and we want to be able to kind of fill that gap. I like the way you said it, kind of changing the conversation around it and really bringing it out into the light. Another part of kind of what you said, that the narrative piece of creating your own story. Can you speak a little bit more about that part of how you use that to help others?
Yeah, I mean, I think for so many of us, we're born and basically our body's number one job, our brain and body's job, besides being fed and sleeping and basic needs on that level, is to figure out how we belong, to figure out how we connect in the world. So as soon as we're born, our body is trying to figure that out. And it's absorbing all of these cues, all of these experiences, direct and indirect, to try to put together this idea, this concept of this is what I need to do, or this is who I have to be, or this is what fitting in and belonging looks like. And the goal would be that you're born and you belong because you're a human, and you belong because you have a right to feel like you belong, no matter what identities you have, how you show up in the world, where you live, you belong. We know, and you and I are both speaking from the United States, so obviously we're going to be influenced by the culture here.
Right.
But obviously, depending on where people live, all cultures are different. But that's not the inherent truth for many people. Again, that could be based on how you look. That could be based on the family systems that you're born into, where you live within your country or your home of origin.
Right.
So what happens is we basically start to get these stories that says, okay, well, if you look this way, if you act this way, if you're a kid, even thinking about the ways that we were taught, kids should be obedient, kids need to be quiet, kids don't need to ask why, they should just listen. All of the rules that we picked up started to form this sense of idea: I don't matter. I don't belong. I don't have value unless other people are telling me that I do. I have to look this way. I have to act this way with our peer groups. When did we change the way we dressed? When did we pretend to like music that we didn't like so that we could belong? And so we start to kind of slowly put somebody else in the driver's seat of our authentic life. And so authenticity becomes synonymous with performing. And for many people, what I do when I come back and work with them, it's figuring out, where did those rules come from? What stories, what experiences did you have that inform that? How do we validate that? Again, especially when we think about intersecting identities, it makes total sense that you've acted that way, felt that way, that you continue to do these things. And how do we reframe it to consider the cost? How do we reframe it to consider the loss? And then help kind of think about ways we could shift it back into, what would it look like for you to actually ask yourself the question, get in touch with your body, get in touch with your true self on what do you want, who are you, and how can that version show up outside of the performance, and be okay if that doesn't fit in with your friends because you actually have lied and you love country music, but all your friends like hip hop. What do you do if you, and I'm speaking that one from experience where all my friends liked country music and I grew up with jazz and hip hop in my household, and I lied and said I loved country for so long, but like being honest and being like, I don't like your music, and that's okay. But trusting that not everything about us is the ticket to being rejected. If you like something, if you do something, if you don't go along with the norm, if you don't go to the family get together, or just, let somebody do something and you speak up against it, it doesn't mean that you inherently don't belong in this world. So that's a lot of the work that I do, is helping people understand the systems that keep us stuck, recognizing what is ultimately out of our control, and then recentering the control we do have on ourselves and helping people write a different story.
Yeah. I love that. I love just kind of the way you speak about it, and as well as how you use it. I find that a lot of clients have these negative core beliefs that they're really given, and they take it on, and it really becomes who they are. And I think that, another layer that we have in today's society, obviously, is social media, kind of in the influence that has. How do you see that show up for some people who may be dealing with any body image or dysmorphia or eating disorders? How do you see the impact of social media on that?
Whenever somebody asks that question, I think back to this one client I had when I was working with adolescents in an IOP program, so intensive outpatient, which is somebody that needs a more significant amount of care, but they aren't necessarily going into a hospital program. And we were talking about social media, talking about just the pressure to present a certain way. And I don't know how this came up or how we got there, but essentially this client shared they had like 13 different Instagram profiles.
Wow.
And then it came out at the table that all of these other people in this program all had different Instagram profiles. And it was like, I have one profile for when I'm pro recovery. I have one profile that's all my eating disorder type things. I have one profile to show pictures of my cat. I have one profile that I share with this group of people at school. I have one, the profile that they shared with their parents. And so there were all these different aspects of self being presented and trying to portray a certain self, a certain identity. And it really got me interested in understanding social media as sort of a decentering of the self. And there's some research that was done on, I think particularly it was done when Instagram and Facebook were kind of at the top. This is pre TikTok and a lot of these other things, but I do think it like crosses into it. And it's this idea that the more we kind of create a self on social media, the more we detach. It's called personality disintegration. We sort of detach from our authentic self because everything is curated, everything is cultivated.
Yeah.
I'm a painter, and I think about when I do an art show, what pieces do I take to an art show versus all of the pieces I have back in my studio that I don't show people, that are the flops, the half dones, the failures, the stuff it's not quite right, or I'm afraid that someone's going to judge that. I think that's a lot of what social media has done is we think so much about how am I going to be perceived when I put something out into the world? And we're so quick to experience the feedback, good, bad, and neutral. How many likes did you get? How many shares did you get? How many people viewed your video? How many negative comments did you get? And so we're so automatically hooked to what I share is now only valuable if fill in the blank of whatever piece, the likes, the shares, whatever that is. And then what we're viewing becomes centered on what we're seeking. So what we start to see, when I first got pregnant and I don't even know what I looked up something, I don't know what. And suddenly all my feeds on social media were geared towards mom stuff and just what I was seeing. And then how it was all geared towards early mom stuff over time. Like there's a way that things start to get put in your face to kind of suggest this is the stuff that's relevant. As soon as I had my daughter and I was looking up something around movement, I'd had a C-section. Suddenly I was getting all of this information about weight loss after a baby. And I was like, I'm not looking at that. I was looking at hip mobility. Like I just wanted to know how to safely move my body now that my daughter is here and knowing that I had a C-section, which looks different than, vaginal birth. And so you just think about sort of the power of suggestion and what happens. And I think for so many of us, what's put in front of our face is the algorithm's idea or AI's idea of what we should be interested in. And so if you're seeing all of these things all the time of this person eating this way, or this person talking to you about supplements, or this person talking to you about this movement plan that you can do with your little kids in 20 minutes a day, and you've got no excuse and you should be losing weight, whatever those things are, you start to buy into, oh, that's the next rule. That's the next extension of my core belief. I should look this way. I should dress this way. I should be making videos like that on TikTok too. I should be getting more likes and views. So I need to try harder. So everything starts to become a chase. And I think when it comes to appearance, we know now people are using less filters. They are not curating as much. There was a time when everything was so heavily filtered and curated. We're even seeing the people that are like doing those TikTok filters and they're like, this is what they think I look like, and then showing themselves really. But we know there's still a desire to be perceived a certain way. And if you come into using anything like this, any tool, and you already have that low sense of self, that belief of, gosh, I'm ugly, I'm fat, I'm gross, whatever those really terrible stories are that we tell ourselves, you are ripe to be kind of put on that track to use those filters, buy those products, do those things. And it just kind of keeps you stuck there.
Yeah. I love the things that you highlighted there about that experience. And let me just go all the way back to the beginning of what you said, like literally 13 profiles. Now I'm over here evaluating myself. I'm like, because I have a personal, and obviously that's, for me to share with my family and friends, and hopefully my clients can't find or whatever, because it's under an alias. And then I have, like the business one and the podcast one. So I'm over here evaluating my own life. So thank you for that, Kira. But I do think it's so important, because we do, like, not even just looking at the eating disorder piece of it, but just the body image piece of it. Like, for example, I put in something last week. I took my weave out, got my hair cut, did all of that
Mm-hmm.
because I was like, I'm trying to focus on having healthier hair. But of course, in my community, weave is a big thing and you got to have it a
Mm-hmm.
certain way and all of that. Mine is the natural movement, which is going towards locks and geared towards being and going back to natural, whatever. So I'm kind of stuck in the middle somewhere.
Yeah.
But and even posting that and being vulnerable with my family and friends about my journey towards trying to get my hair healthier, I was bombarded with ads. Now, every time I log onto Facebook, all I see is ads about hair growth and you can try this if you have this. And it's like, I don't even care about all of that. I'm already doing what I need to do to get to where I would like my hair to be. But at the same time,
Right.
it is something that I never realized how important a woman's hair is to her until I really started getting into the whole social media thing. Like, oh, wow, I need to make sure my hair is like this or that, because it does impact, watch how many people watch you and all of that. Like the algorithm is like a mess, but I just think it's so important that we highlight those things that kind of happen to us. And then coming away from that need to filter ourselves or look a certain way is really important. So I do want to shift gears a little bit just to kind of talk a little bit more about some of those misconceptions that people may have about eating disorder or body image, just those things that you find or sometimes see that people may have and don't recognize that could possibly be an indicator of like disordered eating.
Yeah. I think, we kind of briefly hit on the word disordered eating before. And so whenever I explain eating disorders to people, I think about kind of a spectrum. And so if 0 is, I've never had a negative thought about my body. I've never had any sort of issue with food. All foods fit. I never feel stressed about food. Everything is amazing. That's a 0. And then if 100 is a diagnosable eating disorder, that's where we're getting into anorexia, bulimia, all of these things. That's all the way up here where and maybe we can even break that down to 95 to 100, depending on severity. And we know that that's really scary. Those are really severe. It's the most deadly mental health disorder. There's that need then of a diagnosis, which typically just means it warrants the medical and mental health community to take it a little bit more seriously. Unfortunately, that's really all that means, is it's severe enough that everyone's now going to fund it, give you what you need. But there's everybody that exists in between, everything from that 1 to, we'll say 94. That's disordered eating. So it's the disordered eating, the disordered relationship with the body. I look in the mirror and I feel like I just ate a cookie and I felt fine about myself before. And now I'm putting my clothes on and I feel fat. Or I feel like I'm at the party and I'm so preoccupied about whether I should or shouldn't have some more food because I'm still hungry that I'm not even listening to my friend talk anymore. I've changed my outfit 7 times because I'm so afraid that when I leave, someone's going to notice that bulge in one spot, or they're going to say that my body's too big to wear this thing, or they're going to tell me that I'm brave for wearing this thing and I don't want to feel brave. I just want to feel like a human. So you have these things that kind of change how you show up. And for many of us, I think the tricky part is, in some cultures, a tattoo would be considered self-harm. Body piercings would be considered self-harm. Here it's not. But we think about other forms of doing something to our body are self-harm. But somebody can go, I have clients that go get tattoos or get piercings when they're really upset. And that is ultimately a form of self-harm. We've just normalized it. So when we think about food and we think about our bodies, we've normalized having a poor relationship with our body. We've normalized having these disordered eating patterns. For many of us in the US, that's this sort of overly health-centric idea. Or if we look at intersecting identities, race, gender, all of these other elements, there's like, this is the pathway in the pocket about how you're supposed to feel about your body, what you're allowed to celebrate, how you should eat, what people perceive about you if you eat a certain way. And so it just starts to become these things that we've just kind of accepted. For many of us, I know we're recording this before Thanksgiving. How many people on Thanksgiving get together and eat past a point of fullness? That's not healthy.
Right.
But we've normalized it. We think about people literally unbuttoning their pants, stuffing themselves with so much food, doing that, oh, I can't move. All of that is disordered, eating past a point that your body is comfortable, but we normalize it. And so I think for many of us, the idea that if it's not diagnosed, it's not a problem, that I think gets many people stuck, not asking for help, or maybe realizing that some of what they're doing is actually hurtful or addictive. I
Mm.
think one of the other things too is, I mean, like many things in our country, there's elements, again, if we come back to race and gender and with eating disorders, so much of the research that's been done up until this point, I would say in the last decade, it's changed a little.
Mm.
But so much of the research on eating disorders has been done on 20 something thin white women.
Right.
And most of those people coming from upper middle class or some sort of upper class level. So
Yeah,
many people perceive eating disorders as a rich white woman thing, as a
exactly.
privileged thing. But we don't
Mm.
talk about how does intergenerational trauma, there's tons of research that was done on the impact of food scarcity and slavery and the effect that that's had on the Black community in our
Mm.
country, and how that's created these terrible relationships with people's bodies that could ultimately be something that we need to be exploring more, treating more,
Yeah,
taking more seriously, but we don't. We see it as that. But in reality, a lot of the relationships with their bodies and experiences that people have is connected to these major traumas, but we've never connected the two. So people go, oh, well, this is just normal. This is what we do. This is how we eat. When instead
right.
it's saying, no, this is a trauma response that's been handed down in people's bodies. You don't have to feel that way about your body. You don't have to feel like your body can't be seen as equal in the space.
Yeah.
I know I'm layering so many things in because now ultimately we could get into all the systems of oppression and all of those things too that are affecting it. But I do think the reality is, for many of us, we've been handed a card that says your body doesn't belong here unless, and
Mm.
depending on whatever your identities are, the rules change. And we've just kind of accepted that,
Yeah.
and the pressure we feel to make it look a certain way or stand up a certain way, that is disordered. And even if it's normalized in our culture, it's not okay. It's not fair. And people having to live their life that way is something I hope we can change over time.
Yeah. Wow. You definitely hit on a lot of great points there, and I love that you do highlight the fact that it has been perceived as a rich white woman or a wealthy white woman kind
Mm-hmm.
of thing, because I am feeling like I see maybe not even just the disordered eating part, but the body image piece of it within the Black community right now. Right now we have a lot of women that are going out getting BBLs and doing all
Mm-hmm.
of these things to change their body in ways to kind of be more appealing, especially with the social media, going back to that piece of it. Have you seen a lot of that kind of in your practice, like of women that are having surgeries and different things like that in order to look a certain way?
Yeah. And I would say, so there's kind of the three buckets. I definitely see it a lot with cisgender women. I do think,
Mm.
interestingly, I've more so seen a lot of the surgeries and the more severe augmentation with cisgender men and trans folks. And I
Oh,
think
wow.
within the trans community, there's some overlap of, identity and changing their bodies to align with who they are, how they identify. I
Right.
see it a lot with cisgender men as well. So we see people getting different, like, they're on testosterone, but they're actually getting injections in their muscles. I had one client who very specifically some body dysmorphia around their calves. Their legs were too feminine and they wanted
Mm.
to look more muscular, and they felt like they didn't fit in within the gay community and in
Mm.
the type of gay person that they wanted to identify as. So again, we go
Gotcha.
back to the layers. The idea is the rules that somehow I have to look this way to be accepted, perceived a certain way. And we're getting injections. I think definitely women are doing that as well. I think it's still a bit more normalized for women. So if there's somebody
Yeah.
just, I'm going to go get some Botox, I'm going to go do this, it
Mm.
still is very normalized. Even in gyms, we see people like, oh yeah, do you need a filler? You need this? You need these things going on. And so it is definitely a part that happens. I think the majority of people are not doing that I see. Again, I do
Mm.
think it's happening a lot more, because I think for many people, it's either too expensive for them to be able
Mm.
to do it and to sustain it, or there's kind of a fear. So instead, they're sort of dabbling in other ways of changing their body before they go there. But I definitely think that that's a higher percentage of people doing those things than we probably are even aware of.
Yeah. I mean, you got like different people on social media that make it like a thing, like that's their whole practice is doing
For
that.
sure.
Dr. Miami, I mean, funny guy to
Yes.
watch on IG, but you think about the number of people that he sees in the celebrity world, definitely, and then just regular people that fly down and will save up money to go and do something like that to look a
Right.
certain way to feel good about their bodies. And, I've seen clients before who they'll get it and then don't necessarily keep it up, like you said. And then,
Right.
oh, I'm thinking about doing it again, but I got to lose enough weight in order for me to be able to get it. And it's like,
Right.
yeah, that don't seem like the best way to maintain weight to have to go under the knife to kind of do that. And like even with lipo, so there's just this push, I guess, for a lot of people to look a certain way in doing that, and I guess it worries me because of the health indications, and then also not really making the connection between the fact that this could very well be body dysmorphia.
Well, and there's definitely a population where those surgeries, those procedures can be really helpful. And there are people,
Mm.
and for some of those different procedures, there's months of counseling that goes along with it. So before
Yeah.
somebody does some of those things, that comes up for them. So many people that because we've made it so accessible, I
Mm.
think about we had to have some tree trimming done here. We just bought a house this year and we had people come out to give bids, and multiple people were giving bids and they were like, yeah, just tell me where to cut. Like, I'll cut any part of the tree, like just to make me happy. I'm like, I don't know trees. I don't know. Like, how do you do it? And then we had one person that came in that was like, this is what it looks like to take care of your trees. This is where I'm willing to cut. This is where I'm not willing to cut. This is where we're
Yeah.
getting into looks versus health. There are a lot of people that work in, I would say, the cosmetic world,
Mm.
whether they're medical doctors and they're doing things like that, people that work in sort of the pseudoscience side of things, people in the holistic side. I think on some level, they do believe they're doing the right thing. They believe they're helping people. But I think their net is cast so wide. It's, I'll do whatever anybody wants so they can feel good. But I think what we're doing is creating a band-aid problem. We're just putting
Yeah.
band-aids on something instead of treating the wound inside. So I think about a friend of mine that did get a major procedure done, a major weight loss procedure.
Yeah.
And he went through like 6 months of this counseling. And he and I would meet and we would talk about, talking about suicide or talking about these things that would come up for him and how deep that went. And then the continued counseling that he got even after the procedure. And so when you think about some of these things, if somebody had to sit down and talk through that with somebody, what's going on? Tell me about that. Tell me about the story you have about how your life is going to be better, is going to be different, is going to be
Mm.
solved when that happens. What happens if that doesn't work out for you? Or what
Right.
happens if that changes? Let's talk about when you age. What does that look like? Let's talk about the transition in different things. Let's talk about, we mentioned hair for people that get cancer. What does that look
Right.
like if something happens and now your hair isn't a part of your identity? What do we do if we're putting so many coins in that basket? And I think the people doing this work are often not equipped to ask these questions and they're just trying to
Right.
make this sale. And this, I think, comes full circle on we're such a review culture and we're so much just do what I want when I want it. And because we are just wanting to feel okay about our bodies now, we just want to feel good enough. We want to feel pretty enough. We want to feel strong enough now. We're not willing to wait for those conversations. And then the people on the other side are then willing to do it. And I think that's the feedback loop. That's the issue
Yeah.
is we're not having conversations that need to be had about how did we create a system where everybody in the world feels like their body is not allowed to be here, and what would it look like if you had to put that on hold for 6 months and actually talk through that feeling before you did it? Would there be a difference in the number of people doing these surgeries, procedures, buying all these supplements, doing all these things?
Yeah. I think that it would absolutely change, but we probably won't get to see that for quite a
No,
while, unfortunately.
not
But
in our generation. No.
exactly. So I do want to shift gears yet again, and I want to put the spotlight on you personally. So I ask everyone that comes on the show, how do you personally connect with the idea of being self-aware and fucked up?
I had a conversation in a coaching group I was doing yesterday about how I feel like the more work you do to become aware of yourself, of your own journey, of your healing, of the world and the experience, sometimes the more you wish you could put the covers back over your head because you can't unsee it. I can't unsee things now. So when I do something, when I act a certain way, I am so aware now of why I'm doing it. Like I'm aware when I'm just kind of a dick to my husband. Shoot, this is what's going on. I felt shame. Like I thought I ran a red light the other day and that I was going to get a red light ticket. And I was so upset and I have such a money scarcity story. He came home. I was like yelling at him about something. I couldn't even tell you what it was. I was just like being a dick for just the sake of being a dick.
Okay.
And then that self-awareness piece comes back in when I reflect and I go, I'm feeling a lot of shame. Like I just screwed up in a way that's going to hurt our family. And now I'm hurting him because I'm feeling bad and I'm wanting him to feel bad too. And so then you have to come in and you have to work through it, and you don't have to own it. In my case, I really try to own it and move through it. But I think that's hard because I think you see just how much I think you can beat yourself up that I'm never going to get it right all the time. So self-awareness is this reality of I'm supposed to keep screwing up. That's being human. I'm going to have shame defenses, reactions. I'm going to do things that are hurtful, harmful, get it wrong. And I have to be willing to keep showing up and doing the work. And that's the same about seeing other people in the world too. And I think, I'm sure you see this as a therapist. There are times I wish I could turn that off because I see something, I want to help somebody. I'm like, oh gosh, their life could be better if they just did this. And you realize that's just not my place. My place is to love people exactly where they're at, be there if they ask, and realize that all of us are in some way fucked up because we're all learning how to be human in a world that is really just not designed for all of us to exist imperfectly. And yet that's what we're longing for. So just kind of being in the ride of it with everyone else.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for being authentic and open with your answer to that, and just kind of sharing a little bit more about the human side of us. Because sometimes people see therapists as just these robotic kind of people that don't have problems and challenges. So I definitely appreciate you opening up there. So how can people connect with you if they want to connect with your services, listen to your podcast, and how can they reach out to you to connect to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, going back to our social media discussion, I had to make the decision to get rid of Instagram, TikTok, all of those things, because I was the person that was participating in it, just like what we talked about, where it was about how many likes, how many followers. So the self-aware side of me just kind of took everything off. So now I would say the best place to connect is just to come to my website. So adversityrising.com. They can connect to my podcast from there, kind of think about anything else that I might be doing, or just reach out to me, ask a question if you're looking for more resources on something related to eating disorders, shame, but just come over there and that way we can connect more directly.
Gotcha. You want to plug the podcast?
Yeah. I love that. Okay. Well, see, we're getting on one of my things where I have a hard time promoting anything that's myself. Yeah. So my podcast is Untethering Shame. We are hitting on every single topic that we can around shame. And so if you are interested, it's on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Just go to Untethering Shame with Kira Wackett and you'll see all sorts of different topics. Hopefully find one that resonates with you and stick around for a few more after that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kira. You know I was not going to let you not plug the podcast.
I know.
You weren't promoting it. I was like, yeah, you're going to today. So definitely appreciate you that. But I did really appreciate your time, truly. I really thank you for taking time out of your day. Thank you for what you do and how you take up space in the world and what you do to help others. Guys, please make sure that you connect with Kira. Make sure that you visit the Adversity Rising website. The information will be in the description of this particular episode. Also, be sure to follow me, Tree the LPC, on all social media platforms under the handle Tree the LPC. Until next time, be safe, be well, and make sure that you take care of your mental health